Okay, I'll call this workshop to order here. Most of you know me. Some of you know me at least virtually by email. I'm John Russell. I'm chair of the Research Ethics Board here. Thank you very much for attending today. I think it was sort of our last chance before the great summer academic diaspora. Especially after we had the aborted effort a couple of weeks ago. So it's great to see you all here. Just begin with some thank yous. I want to thank Ramon. Maybe Ramon's gone. Ramon is the administrator who's helped put this together, and also the gentleman behind the camera who you're not going to see, Craig Macadoro, for videotaping this. And thank our speakers for coming today, Jean Ruiz and Terry Fleming. Jean is on the right. Terry Fleming is closer to me. Jean works at the Office of Research Ethics at UBC and also is a unit director for Research Ethics BC. And Terry also is a unit, not a very descriptive title, you guys, unit director. Terry works Island Health?
Yes.
Yes, and is the director of compliance?
Manager of Research Ethics and Compliance.
Anyway, both, most of you will be familiar with Jean. She's spoken at workshops here, and she actually is a regular attender at our workshops as well. She has led policy analysis and behavioral and clinical research ethics at UBC for a number of years, and I dare to say she's one of the leading research ethics educators in this province. And Terry has played a similarly sort of useful role on the island and in British Columbia as well. So we're going to hear from them about harmonization. And just a bit of background, the motivation for this was I saw Sarah Bennett, a colleague of Jean and Terry's, give a terrific talk last fall at UBC on research ethics harmonization. And what Sarah told us in the fall, or showed us in the fall, was that the major health authorities and the major universities have signed on to at least a tentative harmonization arrangement, and that's working. And so it seemed to me then that the next step might be to invite colleges to consider participating in research ethics harmonization. So I talked to Jean, talked to Sarah quite extensively about this, and they seemed amenable to it. And so the purpose of this workshop today is to learn a little bit about research ethics harmonization and what the opportunities might be for colleges and other institutions, post-secondary institutions who haven't joined the harmonization initiative to join it. So without any further ado, I think we'll start today. We'll have about a 50-minute presentation, and there will be a 5-minute biology break. There's food at the back as well. The bathrooms or washrooms are sort of halfway down the hallway. I think the men's washroom is on this floor, is that?
Yep.
Yeah, and the women's washrooms are either one floor up or one floor down in the middle of this hallway. Okay, so thank you very much for coming today. I'm going to give this to Terry.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, I guess, John, you've really taken care of the introductions, so unless you have anything else that you want to say, I'm okay with that. It would be nice for us to know who's around the table, so if we could maybe start here and just have you introduce yourself and the institution that you're affiliated with and maybe your role, that would be great.
Gordon Rowe, Langara, REB, I'm an anthropologist.
Karen Shirley from Wilson College in Victoria, REB chair.
And I'm Felicia Fagbamier from Quantum Polytechnic University. I'm the Research Ethics Board Coordinator.
Catherine Brown, Langara, REB, Department of Philosophy.
Susan Sverdrup Phillips, also on the REB, sociologist.
Janice Sorensen, also at the Langara REB in Nutrition Food Service Management.
Kelly Stinson, I'm chair of the Applied Research Center here at Langara College.
Kevin Craig, I'm an instructor in the Department of Mathematics and Statistics and also the statistical research consultant here at Langara College.
I'm Sean Mashman from History, and I'm on the REB as well.
Ryan Causey, I'm the division chair of Applied Sciences here and on the REB here as well.
Linda Turner, and I'm on the REB at Langara, and I work in the Department of Health of the Continuing Studies Department.
I'm Patricia C. I'm Director of Academic Innovation here at Langara, and I'm the President's liaison to the REB.
I'm Tony Schultz. I'm a sociologist I'm the chair of the Research Ethics Board at North Island College.
And my name is Paola. I work with Terry and Jean at Research Ethics BC, and then the REBC Navigator.
Okay, thanks. Carrie?
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. That helps us. So this is not changing. All right, so this is sort of the desired outcomes of this workshop. We want to talk a little bit about Research Ethics BC, who we are, where it sort of came from, and we'll give you a bit of background on how it all came about. We'll talk through when a study would be submitted through the provincial research ethics platform and would be considered sort of under, I don't want to say under the jurisdiction, but would be eligible to be reviewed through the REBC process. The later part will be a little bit of a show and tell of the provincial research ethics platform, and we can talk through potentially some cases that you might be dealing with. And so I'll be showing you the live system and what it looks like. So I say basic comfort on how to administrate an application through PrEP. It is going to just show off some of the features of PrEP. You can ask questions. If you do decide to come aboard, we would have a more detailed training session. John, you would have no problem using it. In fact, you do use it all the time. And then the last one here, I just had a question. Is there some other reason that people are here today? And I would, if so, I'd like to make sure that we get that covered as well. Go ahead, Karen. Yeah.
Is there a process that you're going to describe so we can become partners?
Yes, that is part of it. Yes, sorry, maybe that should be part of the desired outcome. You should be aware of the process, and we definitely do have a process now. I know for a while we were kind of dangling it out there, and we just hadn't got our governance processes in place. Okay, so we'll move on. Research Ethics BC is a collaborative review process where a researcher can submit a single application and receive a single review for multi-jurisdictional research in BC. So let's say UBC is collaborating with Langara, or there's a Langara professor collaborating with a UBC and SFU professor. This would be a circumstance in which we would put an application through PrEP, and the researcher, rather than have to go through 3 institutions for research ethics review, it goes through a single review process, and it has a single portal for that. REBC was formerly the BC Ethics Harmonization Initiative, and it has recently come under the Academic Health Science Network. They have agreed to finance us. So Terry and I really share the role of unit director. I'm 2 days a week. I'm on a secondment from UBC, and she's 3 days a week on a secondment from Island Health. And in some ways, that shared role, although they wanted it just to be a single person, really brings more diversity and variety to the role, a health authority perspective and an academic institution perspective. The Academic Health Science Network is attempting to connect the province's health research expertise and resources to deliver high priority, high impact innovations in the health system. So they're really looking at how they can put research into practice. It is health focused, but in bringing us on, they are prepared and are not prepared, but they have no issues with also supporting social sciences and behavioral research. So REBC is both health and social sciences and behavioral research. So right now it's made up of 3 core units: the BC Support Unit, which is about patient-oriented research. There's Research Ethics BC and Clinical Trials BC under the Academic Health Science Network. So presently, under Research Ethics BC, we have all of the major health authorities except for the First Nations Health Authority, but we have been in conversations with them pretty much since the onset, and they are in the process of coming on board. And all of BC's major academic institutions. Just recently, the BCIT has come aboard, and we're just moving towards the smaller colleges and universities in BC. Some of you will probably see your institutions up there. that we've been talking to Kwantlen, Thompson River, and Emily Carr. We actually did a similar talk with them just yesterday. So they do a lot of collaborative research even with Vancouver Coastal in health design. So it's really interesting where research is going in the province. Another thing you're going to see, and we'll talk through this a little bit, and some of the stuff that we've had to grapple with, is that you're going to see health authorities, small institutions, big institutions, research-heavy institutions, patient-focused institutions, regional differences. So you have Northern Health and UNBC and UBC as well. So we've had to grapple through a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. So in some ways, it's been quite the adventure. So key principles and objectives to Research Ethics BC really has been collaborative governance. Working together has been really important for us. I think one of the things that was intimidating when the harmonization first started 10 years ago was monster institutions like UBC sort of, I don't want to say pushing their agenda onto smaller REBs, but we really had to take a step back and just everybody come to the table as partners and listen to the concerns of every institution and learn from every institution. So that's where that trust and respect comes from. Yes, there's definitely more institutions that have a much more sort of history and established REB process, and there's others that are just coming on board as research increases in smaller institutions. But I see that as an opportunity to be working together, sharing expertise and capacity building as well. Sustainability was one of our original key principles. Hopefully under the Academic Health Science Network, we do have a bit of sustainability and a little bit of infrastructure, but part of our EBC is creating a network so we are all sort of what sustains it. The different institutions being committed to the process. Objectives to facilitate reciprocity between BC's institutions. Of course, we are looking at timelines and efficiencies of the ethical review processes. As you get to know each other, your trust in each other grows as well. So how much, and we'll talk about that with the models, how much you trust a different institution to take over a review completely or partially changes over time, and that's okay. And the last is to improve system efficiencies. Again, I think this happened with the launch of PrEP just in September this year, so it hasn't even been sort of 6-month point just passed.
I think I need the microphone for this, sorry. And I think that's just for the recording, not so that everybody can hear me. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about the history of how we got here. So it has been a lengthy process. We're nearly 12 years on from originally when it came up as an idea for there to be a harmonized ethical review process. And so that started with initial planning and consultation that took a few years. And then we moved on to having SFU, UBC, and UVic working together with the Michael Smith Foundation for Health Research in order to develop a grant for there to be some funding applied for us to work a little bit closer on this and to actually fund the institutions so that they could free up resources to be a part of the discussion and come up with models that would work. And then in 2014, we renewed this a little bit more with a different type of an effort, which I'll go into a little bit more in some different slides here. But that was the big time when we signed what we called the Reciprocity Agreement. So the original institutions that you saw on the slide that Jean showed earlier, they signed on to an agreement that basically said we were going to strive for reciprocity between the institutions for harmonized ethical review. And it was a commitment to do that and to move forward in that way. So that kind of secured our relationships with each other. And then we actually moved on quite quickly after that. We felt we had dedicated workforce for it. And when I say workforce, that's our advisory committee. These are the people that were on the ground. They were chairs and research ethics board administrators from the partner institutions. And we moved forward and, well, we actually locked everybody in the room one day until we came to an agreement on a minimal risk review. But we did come up with the models. So we have the models that we'll go through a little bit later. And we implemented those. And we did them on a pilot basis, and then we implemented them. And they've been in place now since 2015. So we've actually had these models working for quite some time. But the biggest advance was when we got the additional funding that allowed us to launch the provincial research ethics platform, which is what Jean will talk to a little bit later. But this is our electronic platform that allows us to have harmonized ethical reviews much more smoothly between the institutions, regardless of whether the institution was paper-based versus another one that had their different program that they used. Sorry, I can't do both turn pages in. So, yeah, as it says on the slide, Michael Smith provided some funding. They provided $1 million dollars early on. And I don't know why I still do that after all these years. They provided $1 million. And so they provided some initial funding, and that was provided back to the institutions in order for them to free up REBA's time, Research Ethics Board administrators, to attend, important meetings and be locked in a room in order to come up with the actual project. And so then the sustainability grant that we started working on, SFU and UBC led this, and this was the one where we asked for just a little bit more funding for us to get to the end game of having the actual platform. And now BCAHSN has seen what we've achieved and what we've done with very little funding when other people are asking for large amounts of funding, and how we just kept on going when the funding ran out, and they've actually adopted us now into the family, and we've become one of the operating units that they're going to, that they actually say to people that we are one of their shining stars for having achieved stuff when other people were still waiting for grants to come through. So our setup for the Research Ethics BC, or the BCEHI as it was originally, it involved us getting the senior leaders on board. As always, that is the biggest challenge between institutions, is getting the senior leaders involved and getting them to actually buy into the idea of a harmonized ethical review process, and then having them nominate the people that would be the ones with the boots on the ground that would actually come up with the process. So senior leaders, they're excellent for the ones to be able to say, yes, we want to do this, but we needed them to nominate people that would actually work on it and get it done. And so that's what happened. We had the REB administrators and REB chairs that were the ones that developed the actual processes. Thank you. You're welcome. So where do we go next? So our partner organizations are broadening, as we discussed, or as you saw on that other slide. And it is across all of the regions in British Columbia. It's growing all the time. We actually are looking at working with Selkirk College in, they're in the Kootenays, in a place I've never even been, so I'm looking forward to that. Maybe we'll get a visit in there. But we have we have broad institutional perspectives, as Jean talked about, and we're talking about not just having the roles that are the REB chairs and the administrators, but we're going to expand this now, and we're going to move to a different kind of an advisory council structure. And this structure is going to include patient partners, researchers, and the community as part of our advisory council going forward. We do see ourselves as being a group that had a lot to achieve, and we had very strict objectives that we were going to come up with the models and we were going to develop the platform. But where we go in the future, we need some more advice on that. So we are developing an advisory council that will help advise. I think this is you.
I think this is me. Okay, so when should you apply for a harmonized review? I thought we could just go through a couple of examples, and maybe if you have examples that you'd like to bring, because some of them can get a little murky, specifically around affiliations, and or when people have dual affiliations, and it sort of depends on which role you're doing it under. And maybe we could talk a little bit through that. But basically, if you're conducting research that involves more than one of the REBC institutions, you should use the research ethics platform, provincial platform. So this would include if you had a study team that had multiple affiliations on it. Here I mean, UBC, SFU, Langara, and we can talk through if this is a issue that you guys relate to, what you do when you have adjunct professors from UBC that also are on staff at Langara. If you're recruiting participants from those institutions, so health authorities, patients are a big one, academic institutions, students. Recruiting staff also, it varies slightly between the health authorities, but generally that would come under the jurisdiction of the REB as well. well within the health authorities. Using facilities and of course using charts or patient data. If you're doing the mix of any of these with more than one institution, this would be something that we would call a multi-jurisdictional research project, and it would be, as long as everybody was participating in REBC, would come under, go through PrEP. Is there questions on that, or do people want to talk through scenarios, or is it pretty straightforward?
Why, if you're just using someone's facilities, would they have any kind of thing to do with your application?
No, yeah, you go for it. Yeah.
So, being from a health authority, quite often that affects us more often than others because we're talking about hospital sites. So, if we're talking about facilities being used, that's generally what we're referring to. So, somebody wants to come in from another institution. Quite often at Island Health, our partner is UVic. So, a UVic researcher wants to conduct research at a hospital in Island Health jurisdiction. That's what we talk about with facilities. Another example of facilities is if you're using the lab, the MRI, the X-ray facilities, any of those functions that are performed at a health authority, that means that it comes under multi-jurisdictional review as well.
So I have a question. So my guess is that some of the institutions will have different criteria for what counts as a study that's reviewable even at their site, right? And then they may not agree with all these criteria for what counts even as a multi-site study. So I mean, suppose somebody wants to simply post an ad at Langara and to recruit participants from Langara, but it's a it's a completely anonymous survey, and the data is not going to be sifted so that Langara is a specific subgroup within the data. That wouldn't be reviewable here, right? And even if it was, so we could have a plan to have research here that did something like that at some other institution. They may or may not require that it be reviewed by an REB. So I'm just wondering how the decision-making process gets. Can you say a little bit more about how something is determined to be a multi-site study when there can be different criteria for what is reviewable at different sites and so on? Is that?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. There's two answers to that. One is that PrEP has an algorithm that's been programmed into it, and so in that case, if the researcher put that Langara is a site, even though there was nobody from the study team that's affiliated with Langara, the algorithm would pick Langara up. It would flag that as multi-jurisdictional, and because the algorithm, and we'll talk about it in the next half, but it's a little bit more complex than that. It wouldn't put Langara as the board of record. So let's say UBC was the head site. It would go into our inbox. We would then look at it and say, okay, they're just putting posters. We wouldn't require review for this. We would there's a button that you can click, which is this harmonized? You say no, you remove Langara, it's done. In times where there's a question, your administrator would be called. Like that again is one of the things that I think REBC has done for all of us. We just all know each other now. So it's like a quick phone call. Hey, I just got this study. Because it's on PrEP, they can look at it too. Would you guys require review for this? If they answer yes, it's you basically there's a manual override. You'd put that it's Langara UBC study, UBC board of record, and then you hit OK, and that immediately will go. You'll have access to that study as soon as that process has happened. Now, if we are consulting with researchers, so sometimes people come and ask us questions before they submit to PrEP, and Langara certainly probably wouldn't want its researchers to waste their time going through the PrEP system if they don't have to. It would be sort of similar to what happens now in the sort of discussion of would UBC require, in that exact scenario, I might ask, depending if they're recruiting a lot of students, but even if they're targeting students, I probably wouldn't ask for any more than the local REB's application process, and I just sort of stick a record of it in that scenario, but I wouldn't call that multi-jurisdictional. The one that's become a bit sticky is the affiliations bit. And also, this process has elucidated when people have been in non-compliance because of some of this. And I know that there was, I don't want to name institutions, but there was, a major academic institution whose researchers were relying on another major academic institution's REB, and then that was their response. Well, this institution reviewed ethics. They didn't realize that they also had to go through their home institution. Health authorities have had increases in applications since this happened. I think this is the way research is moving, to be honest. I think that's how it's up. But I also think that there's been a further awareness of, an example is a doctor in a health authority is supervising a residence project that's through UBC, and it's a behavioral project. The health authority, because the primary appointments in the health authority would get flagged that one of their doctors is doing research. And we actually have a subcommittee working on this issue just for clarity in the residence program, so people know what to expect. How that scenario would be dealt with is, yes, there may be a requirement, but this is when direct reciprocity comes in, and we'll talk to that in the models, which is we have a very loose need to see this application. I have a dual appointment. Technically, the policy says I need to review this. Technically, to be compliant, it should come through us, but the risk is really on UBC. So they just put one, a note in the system that says that we'll accept Island Health's review or UBC's review of this, and they don't see the application again. You'll always have access to it. And we will talk through this, but one of the strengths, and maybe actually it's the next slide, it is that it does, the platform allows for a bit of institutional, well, more than a bit. It allows for institutional autonomy. I don't even know what it would look like to try to get all the REBs in the province to be exactly on the same page. And we discovered pretty early on, that was sort of where the vision started a little bit with harmonization. Like, we'll just get everybody to agree to reciprocity and it'll be quick and easy. But that's not actually how it worked. That created a lot of tensions, and people weren't ready to some extent give up their institutional autonomy, nor could they under some policies. So you really do have the freedom to choose how you interact with an application. You'll be able to see it if your institution is affiliated with it. I developed an SOP for my staff that just says if this is how UBC is involved in this, you don't need to review it. You do need to review it. So it's kind of like a flow chart of when we want to be more involved and when we don't want to be more involved. And as I said at the beginning, it sort of shifts over time as you really learn how the other REBs work and that trust is built up. So you wouldn't lose your autonomy or your sort of sense of what kind of research is happening in your institution. You would have records of that.
Can I give an example for this?
Yeah, sure,
so
please.
The policy that she's talking about that she created at UBC, we actually we adopted at Island Health as well. So that what it says in it is that if an application is received, for example, and the only participation that affects Island Health is that there's a physician identified as supervising a student, but there's absolutely nothing else happening at Island Health, we have decided, and it's in a policy, that we will grant full reciprocity. What that means is that our name is on there, but we're giving UBC the ability to, their REB, to review and approve it because the amount of risk for our institution is so low. And we've got it in a policy that they will review and approve it. Our name stays on it. And it's showing on all of the records, so within PrEP, we can always still go and see it. And if anything changes in the future, nobody has to put in a new application. They can just amend it and say, okay, now that physician is actually going to expand the research to involve something else that does involve Island Health. So we're already on the study, but now we're more involved and we'll review that amendment. Does that help?
Yeah, so if I can summarize, just to try to see if you agree with my understanding. So the key thing is to have a flagging system, so that people can make decisions about the extent of their, institutions can make decisions about the extent of their involvement. And then that is also an ongoing thing, so that if the study changes or even the policy changes, then their input may change over time as well.
Yes, and some of the institutions will say this is definitely not harmonized and take our name off of it altogether based on their own internal policies, but that is not consistent across all of them, and we don't require that consistency. It's meant to be a collaborative model, and you know, if you want on that particular study to be involved in the review, that's your choice, and you can come in and out, so it allows for that.
So that is really the advantage of having the single platform. It's a common interface. It's common application forms as well. I think some of the challenges that we have had in the past, when we implemented the models without the platform, what we did was decide amongst ourselves that whoever was decided to be the board of record, they could use their application forms, and all of the other REBs would agree to review off of the board of records application. Now again, it was another locked room scenario, but we have provincial application forms. A lot of the REBs have adopted them for their single jurisdictional reviews as well. At UBC, it's pretty much the same application form. Actually, I think it is exactly the same application form. There's some branch offs that are available for single jurisdictional only. But other than that, it's more or less exactly the same application form, so you don't get this confusion between, you know, asking the same question slightly different 4 times. So that has been helping. The platform increases efficiencies, so you're not having to do a lot of the emailing back and forth. All the documents and everything are on the system. And the last one may be important to, it was really important to us as administrators. Tracking and matrix and reports has been very difficult with harmonization. We have had to do it manually for years. Trying to get a sort of a picture of what kind of research is happening in the province has been really difficult. But now with RISE, we're developing reports that we can pull just straight pictures of what's harmonized, what's not, what had a harmonized certificate. In the first, what was 4 months of prep, there was over 600 harmonized applications in the prep system, in which I think it was 555, in which a REBA, Research Ethics Board administrator, actually hit the harmonized button and said, yes, this application is harmonized. So I was actually shocked at those numbers. So it's definitely, there's lots out there. So we'll talk about the models a bit. Please feel free to ask questions as we go through. If you cannot see, actually, put up your hand and I will pass out. John has helpfully printed them. Does anybody need a copy of the model? You do. Okay, perfect. Anybody else? You need some? Okay.
Oh yes, hi. You have a question, or you want a copy of the model?
Minimal research ethics review, minimal risk. Oh, and the other one's on the other side. Okay.
So the model itself, it is a little bit difficult probably to see from the back of the room. But the minimal risk model, we took the approach that as soon as the principal investigator initiated the application, that the REBs would be notified and they would have an opportunity to take a look at it and determine what would happen next. So they would be able to determine who is going to be the board of record and in particular who would be reviewing it. So the board of record basically means, and I'll go through the definitions a little bit later, who is going to be that one board that is going to take on most of the legwork for this study. Or for the review of this study. Not necessarily that they're going to review it on behalf of everybody, but they're going to do the majority of the heavy lifting. So one board of record. Now with minimal risk, that's a delegated review. That generally means a chair and another member of their board, or maybe 2 members of their board take a look at it. It depends on what the function is of your board and how it's set up. But the board of record would review it, come up with their provisos as to what they would like to see happening with this study and what changes should be made. And then that would be shared with the rest of the other REBAs, the Research Ethics Board administrators. And they would then share, more broadly with their chair if they needed to, or if the provisos were manageable, they would just agree to them. But it gives each board the opportunity to interact with it. So if something comes up that wasn't picked up by somebody else, this is the opportunity for it to be erased. Not everybody understands how things might be done at Island Health, for example. So it might be okay for us to put in a proviso that is specific to the way that patients are contacted or something along those lines, asking questions along those lines. So it gives everybody the opportunity. Then it goes back to the Board of Record for them to compile the provisos, and they send it out to the researcher. So what this means is that the researcher has one point of contact. Now, when we were doing this as a manual exercise before we had prep, this meant, as Jean alluded to, a lot of emails between the Research Ethics Board administrators, a lot of paper going back and forth, so to speak, and collecting that information. But now with the platform, it's much easier because everything just shows up as a conversation point within RISE, and all of the information is there for it to be collected and collated into one response to the researcher. So that's the first model. We have some timelines associated with it because we had to set some expectations for ourselves. So, and we had to measure them. So we set it that within the first 5 days of the receipt of the application, the Board of Record would be determined, and whether it was minimal risk or above minimal risk. We needed to set 5 days because, you know, not everybody is around all the time. So we had to give the boards that opportunity to interact with it. And then there's 10 days in order to conduct the actual review and provide the provisos back out to the other research ethics boards. And so when your researcher is expecting to receive their response, that can change because they'll get the first set of provisos and then they may interact with it and get a second set depending on how well they answer the provisos. And you've all been through that, I'm sure. And then eventually they'll be giving their combined certificate of approval. So the harmonized certificate of approval will then have the logos of all of the institutions involved in the review of the study, and it clearly outlines that they have approval for all of those institutions. It only means the institutions that have been named on the application. It doesn't mean that they now have approval for institutions, for all of the institutions in British Columbia. Just to be clear, because we have had researchers that thought that might be the case.
And just to highlight too, for the minimal risk model, usually the provisos are dealt with exclusively by the Board of Record. There is a little click box that says, I want to see the proviso response, I don't want to see the proviso response for partner institutions, but generally in the minimal risk scenario, the Board of Record seeks that consultation. It's that the idea is proportional, it's minimal risk. You give your feedback, but the Board of Record and the chair or whoever's reviewing that can resolve those provisos without further consultation. But of course there is that, I would like to see this proviso or response come back.
Any questions on any of that before I move on? No? Okay. So continuing review is your post-approval activities, your annual renewal, and any amendments. And it operates under the same premise as that the Board of Record manages the continuing review, especially with the minimal risk study. So the Board of Record would be able to handle the annual renewal without having to send it out to the rest of the Research Ethics Board administrators for them to review. And especially if we're talking about amendments that are very small, administrative in nature, we've taken the approach that unless it has increase the risk of the study, the other REBs will not be notified, and the Board of Record will manage the PAA, or sorry, the post-approval activity or the continuing review.
So for example, I'm just going to throw out some examples, because this is where you might get people having just different senses around what their level of risk is. If you were moving from an online advertisement which was approved in the original application to a paper poster scenario, we wouldn't require consultation with all of the partner REBs about that. If there's something site-specific, like again, the one that John, they're going to post the poster all over Langara, you probably would get a call being like, do you want to see this or not? And of course, most REBs would put in the caveat, ensure that you have permissions from the places that you're going to post the poster. But that would be an example where the overall risk of the study has not increased, and so therefore the post-approval activities would not need to be dealt with in collaboration with everybody.
And just so you know that when, we haven't described it here, but say your study was originally between Langara and UBC, and then they decide for some unknown reason that they're going to involve Island Health. And so they put it in as an amendment, and they say, okay, we're amending this study, and now we're going to be going to Island Health as well. through the PAA process, Island Health would get added into the review of the study, and they would be given the opportunity to review the study as if it was brand new to them, because it is brand new to them.
Yeah.
So they would get about 2 weeks in order to take a look at their review process, to add in their comments, because they won't have seen it at all before that. But we still manage, nobody is approving on behalf of another institution. They are given that opportunity. Yes?
What about a case where, in a continuing review setting, if the risk of the study jumps from minimal risk to something that would require full board review?
It's easy to fix, or sorry, to change in there. But basically what it would, all of the boards would be notified. And so the board of record would be sending a notification out to the rest of the boards to say, there's been a substantial change. Everybody needs to conduct a review and we need to come to an agreement. And it goes back to that first one where we've got a couple of days for everybody to take a look at it and decide, is this need to be escalated and is now above minimal risk and needs to go to a full board meeting, and it needs to be discussed between them. Yeah. But as Jean said, in the course of the last 10 years of us getting used to getting into a harmonized review mode, we've gotten to know each other very well, and so we just pick up the phone these days.
Yeah, and the default on that one is if one of the REBs is going to require a full board review, then usually we'll be like, fine, you get to be the board of record then. Yeah. You know, it'll be escalated up to the full board, and you can do that all in prep. You just assign it to a full board meeting, and then you assign it for harmonized review, and it goes out to the institutions to alert them that it's going to a full board meeting. We'll talk about, or you're going to in the next slide talk about the full board process. Yeah.
So similar to the minimal risk model, the above minimal risk, the change in this one is that now you're talking about a board meeting. So in the minimal risk model, you had the board of record would conduct the review and then send out the provisos to everyone. But in an above minimal risk, we're talking about a board meeting. So generally what happens is the board of record notifies the other boards and says, this is when we're the board of record and this is when our board meeting is. And each institution has the ability to send at least one member of their board to attend that meeting. Generally it's a virtual meeting, and so that they can be a part of the board review process. Or they have the option of saying, we've reviewed it on our own and here's our provisos for when you have your board meeting. They can do it that way as well, or they can obviously defer. But defer to the other board in order to do that review. But generally what we've been happening is the other boards join the board meeting, and it's a very collaborative process. It is very interesting because the learning that has come from that has affected how other people are conducting their reviews, which has been very productive. We've come closer together in our evaluations of risk, and that's much better for us as well. Just trying to think if there's any catch points on this one.
I have a question about timing. So I'd like two answers, right? One is how well is this sort of these sets of timelines work, as a matter of fact. But something that must raise challenges is when different REBs and multi-sites have, some may meet once a month, some may meet twice a month, some may meet every second month, and so on. So how does that, just about the efficiencies in terms of these expected timelines, and then how you adapt when, maybe the most appropriate board of record is one that only meets once a month. But it's not. That's not ideal from the researcher's perspective.
It's a good question. So
John knows.
Yeah. So we do have that difference. We do have the ones that have boards that only meet once a month. But what happens is if that's a board of record, they set that meeting date. But generally, what we've stated is that all the other boards have to be allowed to have at least 2 weeks to review it. So if you have a board, an REB that has a meeting coming up and it's 10 days from now, and the researcher happens to get their application in and it's determined right away that it should be going to full board, 10 days may not be enough for all the other REBs to be able to have an input into this. So it generally would go to the next meeting. And likewise, if the board only meets once a month, if it is one of those where the board of record, that's how long it takes, and that's when the meeting is.
So this becomes an issue with boards like the CREB, and I actually think the CREB is pretty much the only board in the entire province that meets every 2 weeks. The BREB used to until we adjusted the risk threshold.
For people that CREB is the clinical research.
Sorry.
Yeah. UBC.
Yeah.
BREB is behavioral.
The Behavioral Research Ethics Board. Both of those boards handle a large volume of applications. And the CREB meets once every 2 weeks. So these turnaround times are already stressing the CREB because they would be done the entire review within, well, probably 5 or 10 days before that. And so what we have said, sometimes we even put it back on the researcher, but what we have said is that the harmonized process isn't going to take longer than the slowest institution. Now, our hope is that it'll take much less time, and it certainly will take the researcher a lot less filling out of different applications, because the second you break away from the harmonized process, you have to do multiple applications to multiple institutions. And I don't think I've had more than a single researcher who said that's fine. And they kind of understand that that's part of it, part of the dynamic. We have some institutions that are deviant when it comes to turnaround times, and so we work on them. We're working on it. Again, it comes with that trust, I think, relationship that's coming as well, that we all understand each other, and also the pressures of work. Some, REBs are hugely under-resourced, so sometimes the administrators are overworked. But I also think, as we've seen trust and just getting the models into to work, and you've kind of run that track a couple times, it becomes easier and you're quicker, and we've seen the turnaround times, they're much better. We did have issues definitely at the very beginning, and we're seeing that too when we're collaborating with other institutions that are coming on board a bit as they are establishing their review processes internally around the harmonized process. I think everybody's a little bit more conservative when it comes to research ethics. This is my gut and anecdotal experience. When they first start to put their comments out there to a group that they don't know, but as they get to know people, they're more relaxed around certain things, so they don't have that extra cautious kind of review. So that's part of it. But you had two questions. What was the other one?
Answered both of them.
Oh, did I? Okay.
One of the other things that we've experienced as well is the ability to judge the board of record in a case where you've got a study that is like 50% at each institution. It could go either way. And I've actually done this myself. I've called the other institution and say, so what's your workload like? And we've had the discussion and helped each other out. So they become board of record and they carry it that time. But then when they're under a heavy workload, they pass it back to us. We've also had the experience of when we're having a full board review and we were short a lawyer. And so we borrowed a lawyer from another REB. So it allows us to have that capacity to, work through those little challenges as well in order to meet quorum if necessary.
We'll talk to this a little bit. In fact, I think it might be in the next slide. You did that one already.
This is continuing review for full board, and generally continuing review would not go back to the full board unless it is an escalation in risk or a requirement of under policies such as NIH. And in those cases, it would follow the same process as before. It's drawn out very, like lots of boxes here, but it is the same process. I won't beleaguer that.
Okay, so the vision where things are going, we want to continue this sort of collaborative BC ethics process in BC. We are working towards maximal reciprocity. That's still one of our goals, to make research BC an attractive place to do multi-jurisdictional research. But that maximal reciprocity is coming with those relationships and that trust building. We would like to expand the models to partners outside of to partner institutions and smaller institutions around the province. So we will talk to how, if you're interested, how you can come on board. And this second last one, I think, is one of my passion points. I'd like to see REBC kind of move into capacity building and education. I think we were even talking about, I had a managers meeting this morning, and it was requested that REBC take up a UBC kind of issue, because what's happening is that they, just getting guidance that's similar, devoting resources. A lot of times we're working on the same issues in silos. A couple examples are the difference between quality assurance and research. Indigenous research ethics, what does that look like, and how are we dealing with research done with Indigenous communities or community-based research? These are just a couple examples where I could see really us partnering with local community organizations, health authorities, and develop kind of a network of knowledge and expertise where we would be able to check in with different institutions. Like if you're doing a pediatric clinical study, you can check into C&W's REB around a certain topic. One of the things that has come up, and this is just internal to UBC, but just 10 years ago, UBC was 7 separate REBs with Providence Health and the Behavioral Research Ethics Board, and working in research in the downtown east side. We've started to collaborate, and because PrEP is allowed, just even internally between the two different UBC boards, we're working together on the more of the behavioral with a little bit of clinical stuff to share expertise and share people. If you have somebody that can really speak to a problem that you're dealing with, because I am constantly confused about what I should do with conflicting information I'm receiving from a researcher, and to be able to talk to an expert is fantastic. So it's a sort of network of information around research ethics that I'm hoping that we can build over time. Which is the last bullet.
And then we'll move on to this. So part of the thing that we've actually benefited from being part of BCHSN is access to their communications team and the resources of a web expertise. So this has been wonderful for us. We have our own website now. We don't have a lot on it yet, but we have our own website, and we're updating it all the time. And one of the things that we have got access to is something called an electronic community of practice, an ECOP. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with that, but it allows us to have a conversation electronically rather than calling meetings to have discussions. So we're right now asking for consultation on our draft terms of reference for our new advisory council. And so we've put it up online, and it's like a SharePoint that people can access from any institution. So what we want to do is use the ECOP facilities that we have to be able to have those conversations across the board and network across the board. So we're looking at different levels of membership of being a part of Research Ethics BC, not just being, an REB member because you have a TCPS2 compliant REB and you're going to be reviewing harmonized reviews, but also being just a member because you have an interest in research ethics in general and having access to the knowledge base and the communications and the networking capabilities. And we want to be able to go out there and do a lot more outreach, and part of that is going to be, we're part sponsors of the upcoming REB West conference in Kelowna. So that's something that we're wanting to do more of.
And just around the electronic communities of practice, if you are interested, email Paola. And so this is all new, right? We're just getting this sort of governance structure in the Academic Health Science Network. I started my role February 1st. So we're working at creating, you sign up. So if you want to get the email, you get the email basically. But this would be a place where if there was any updates, let's say there was a regulatory change or there was our PrEP manual is pretty detailed and it's sort of like our fourth baby. But if Paola updates it, she would be posting it there and everybody would get a quick blast to say that the manual's been updated for this. And then it's the same with communications. But you do need to be entered into the system. So if you're interested in joining that, just let Paola know. And we can over time see how that evolves. So I think we are ready for a break.
Oh, wow.
Yeah?
Perfect.
Is it perfect? Okay, perfect. That's perfect.
So we'll take 5 or 6 minutes.
Okay.
And reconvene.
Okay. A bit of a demonstration on what the system looks like. I am going to log into the actual system to do this just so I can interact with it and you can see it live. Yeah, I mean, you won't be exposed to any confidential information, but if you try not to remember anything you see. No, you won't. You won't. It just in order to show it's actually there's a sandbox, but it's a bit slow. So I'd rather show you the actual system. This isn't the system. This is the website. It's the RISE website. So I'm just gonna exit here and just pull it up here. So PrEP is hosted in the RISE system at UBC. And so who has used RISE before? Is it just John and you? Has anybody else kind of gone through? Okay. So this is the RISE website. This is not the research ethics website, which also has tons of really interesting information on it. This is just the information system. And what you want to pay attention to here is that there's guidance notes and tutorials on how to navigate RISE. These are really useful resources. RISE is meant to be self-taught, but if the institution comes on, I will do a hands-on training with your group to get you sort of familiar with it. There's also a sandbox here and sample forms. So if you'd like to look at what the Provincial Research Ethics Platform form looks like, there's a copy of it here, as well as the clinical form is here. Including all of the branch-offs. The most notable difference is we now include an Indigenous branch-off around community-based research ethics. And I should just do a little plug. We also have a short form for survey research and secondary use of research in the behavioral context. So if you're just doing a simple survey, you only have a 1-page application. And that just launched. Very exciting for me. So to log into the system, you just go over here and you hit login. You will need to get, actually I should show you quickly how to access the system. You do need to have UBC CWL as well as a RISE account. So yes, this is the part where people start to go, oh, it is an electronic system, so you do have to have an account. It's just like any other electronic system. It is quite straightforward to get that. So RISE login and registration. Oh, now it's memorized that I want to. Account registration information, RISE information, login. This is where you're going to get the step-by-step on how to access RISE. It takes about 24 hours. Actually writing the email saying I'd like to get a CWL and a RISE researcher number only takes a couple of minutes, and then it takes the RISE team. Usually they're much quicker. In fact, Roger's pretty much within minutes, but we say the turnaround time you should leave 24 hours. The first time you log into the system, it asks you for a researcher number. This is your personal identification number in the system. You put it in once and you never have to worry about it again. As soon as you've registered in the system, this means your name will be available in all the drop-down boxes. So the idea behind this is that we can link you with all the applications that you've touched. If you're a researcher, so researchers have to go through the same process. Let's say you have a non-compliant researcher at your institution, you can quickly pull up every single application that that person is a principal investigator, co-investigator, or a primary contact on. Sometimes it's not compliance issues. Maybe you want to award your researchers and recognize them for their accomplishments. You can also see how much research is happening. But it's just really, your name has to be in the system in order to get that interconnectivity. So you log in here. So your CWL is something that you will need to remember if you're not affiliated with UBC. If you're affiliated with UBC, you use it all the time. So this is going to log me into the LREB homepage. So this is the sort of the main interface of the system. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is roles right here. There are multiple roles in RISE. So you could be a research ethics board administrator and also a researcher and also a chair. So it's important, depending on the function that you're doing in RISE, that you have the right role. So if I put that I'm PI and staff, you're going to see that my role fundamentally changes, and I can immediately create a human research ethics application. So this is where you click. You can see I've got a couple in the go, and you can just immediately start to fill out the ethics application, which is right here. You can come back to it. You don't have to do it in one sitting. It does time save now. There used to be a lot of timeouts. The system has these question marks for guidance. The guidance can be moved about. If it's in your way, it'll refresh if you have another, which is a bit different with the launch of prep. So I'm going to just close that down. Here I'd like to show sort of the REB administrator view as well. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to show a committee member view. I think it'll be a bit... most of you would be interacting with RISE. Who would do research besides on a couple of you would be doing research? What about research ethics administration? You would, and you would as well, and the rest of you are board members, right? So you would all do. So this is what the committee member view looks like. When you're assigned a study, it appears here, right here, in this area here. My assigned full review, and I'm just hoping I don't have any assigned, but it would be great if I did. And your expedited review would be here. So basically it's a line that you just click on, and I'll show you what that line looks like under here, which is all full board applications. I wonder if there's going to be any. There'll be tons under the expedited review. We just had a meeting. So this is what they look like. This is essentially what an application would look like. And then you just click on it and it opens. It opens up. I'm going to open this one just so you can see. There's going to be comments in it, so maybe I won't. There's comments here at the bottom. You can see that the pre-review's been attached, and there's correspondence here with the research ethics administrator. And to review the application, you would simply click on application full. There's jump down boxes here where you can, is this the survey branch off?
Oh, there it is.
Where you could, you can go through the application just by going, forward like this, and you're reviewing each of the content of the application this way. I am going to show off the survey. What I should do is show off how it has a lot of hide and show features. So if you're collecting identifiers, all of a sudden 4 more questions appear. It's quite interesting. So this is just an example. This is the survey branch off. It talks about what platform. Is it web-based? Where's the information stored? Is there reimbursement? And the uniqueness of this application is that it goes from the study team to is this a survey? You click that it's a survey, and then you just fill out this page. So the normal RISE application is about 9 pages, and the survey branch off application is going to be about 5, with the first 4 being very easy questions, just like filling in the study team, funding. It's not pages, it's just 3 or 4 questions per page. So I'm going to exit out of that. Yeah, sure.
So can I ask that you show them just how a reviewer would enter?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I have a lot of comments here because I have lots of roles. What you will have in this, if this was assigned to you for review, you will have a comment button that is add reviewer notes for a committee member right here. So you will review the application, you click on this, and this you can enter your comments just using, text. You can also add a document here. You can drag and drop the document as well. What I usually suggest to reviewers is that they have a Word document or some sort of text document file open, and then they write their comments in there, and then they just copy and paste it into this box. It's a touch screen. And then you hit OK. I'm not going to hit OK because this is a live file. And then your comment and your name will appear on top of that correspondence section that you see here. So you can just see that there's, Maria has posted, this has just been assigned for review, so there's no, the reviewer hasn't looked at it yet. And then she has posted kind of an administrative review of the application, and it has assigned it to an REB member. So when he comes in, he will add his comments on top. When he's finished, Maria will know that his comments have been made. So I can go back. As far as RISE navigation goes, if you ever get lost in RISE, you can always go back to my home, which is that first page that you were at. Again, for reviewers, you won't have all that clutter that I had with all the tons of applications. You'll have 1 or 2 applications that you would really be looking at. For REB administrators, so I'll just show you quickly here what the admin role looks like. For those of you who are in that, the inbox is where we receive studies. So all the studies that are pending UBC approval, I'm afraid to look, are right here. So this is here. So you can see here when it says harmonized over in the left-hand corner, is it right-hand corner? It says yes. So that is a harmonized application, and it's in the middle of being processed as we speak. We're not doing so bad. We have 14 items here. There's no other harmonized applications in there. The inbox here, this is our post-approval activities. I'm not doing as well on that front. And again, it's marked whether it's harmonized. So if you are looking at, for the administration point of view, anything that requires action will come into your inbox, either the INS box or the in post-approval activity box. And so these all require REBA actions. Once they've been assigned, they jump over to the expedited box, and you'll see in this box that you have assigned for expedited review, and you can see reviewers' names appear beside them. So when we are cleaning out the EXPS box, we're just looking at where a reviewer has commented. And then you would open that and you could process that application because you know that that reviewer has commented. And the same is for the post-approval activities. So I can see that there's an application here. It is harmonized. That requires processing. Why don't I open up one of these harmonized? I can't tell you what I'm going to see. Do you mind if I... Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
No, I was just gonna suggest, I don't know if
fentanyl test strips. I think this is actually a bit of a sensitive one, but let me...
About showing them what it's like to see a PAA to be able to review the differences.
Oh, well, that's pretty advanced RISE using, but we could do that. So this is
a good attribute of RISE.
Yeah. Okay.
Systems don't have.
This is a harmonized application. It involves interior health. And so you can see here this logo that's appearing here. That logo, the hugging circle, means it's a harmonized activity. So you can see that Maria said, interior health, new posters and instruction documents have been added to the study. Let me know if you have any concerns. This is coming from Maria. She then assigned it. Dorothy is from interior health. Dorothy then posted comments. She said, yes, she would like to see this review. Then a UBC reviewer looked at it. And then Dorothy sent a consult out to the IM harm reduction group. So, I mean, this is a conversation. You can sort of see how this is evolving. What I'm trying to move, these are live applications, so I am trying to not be too showy of what exactly is happening. Terry is showing is that when you get a post-approval activity, any change that the researcher made to the application is highlighted within RISE, so you can quickly assess what has been added. And to me, that's a key feature because you're trying to evaluate what's new without re-evaluating everything that you've already looked at. And so that, to us, is sort of an important feature. In this case, I'll just show you quickly that on page 5 here, they've made some changes, and you can see that they've highlighted this section here to show that it's been updated. Sometimes it's more nuanced than this, but it looks like they actually just copied and pasted this whole new section. This is what it used to say, and this is what it does now. Actually, no, to be honest, I think this is the only thing that's different, that the green highlight. The green highlight's the only thing that's different between what's up here and what's down there. Yeah. So you can quickly see what's been changed. Okay.
Could you show them just the set of documents? That,
Oh, sure.
Just so they see what they're working from in the application, because that's one of the first places they're going to.
The page 9, you mean? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so page 9 of the application, and I do go over at one point sort of the different components of the application, but is where all the documents are stored. So this is a pretty intensive study, so not all studies are going to have this many documents attached, but you can see here that you can pull any of the study documents. So here's all the consent documents. This group works a lot with Pure. They work with peers in research, so they have various levels of consent. There's the, go ahead, John.
That's fine. When we finish that, and I've got another question.
Okay, this is where the advertisements or recruitment documents are put. Assent documents will be here. All the questionnaires are here. Again, this is a really intensive study, so there's lots of documents. Most documents are only most studies will only have four actual documents attached to them. Some, I'm just picking one that is a pretty experienced researcher that does a lot of work in the downtown east side. Okay, so I'm gonna, John, what would?
So on the conversation, which is just below.
Yeah.
Right,
sorry, I'm gonna return to the PA cover sheet here.
Yeah, so that's where the provisos would be uploaded for viewing by the Research Ethics Board, so everybody can see that.
Yeah. Here, let me just see if I go back to the homepage of this one study, I can show you where the provisos are. So again, so this is the post-approval activity of this particular study. If I go to here, to the study homepage, I can open it up, and this is the original review of the study. The other thing that RISE will do is it'll give you you can look back to the original application that was submitted, what it looked like for the first or second or third amendments as well. Don't be too concerned that this might seem a little overwhelming right now. Once you work with the system, and we do hands-on training that makes it a little easier, and with studies that it would be sort of more what you're used to handling, you know, it is easier. It can look a little intimidating. But the provisos for the researcher will go here. Oh, this is not showing what I'm, okay, maybe. Anyway, oh, so they originally got very little in way of review, but they are here. You can also attach a document for them. And then what the
researcher will upload their response, which will be on page 9, but often is cut and pasted
into the actual original review. So this one started way back in the day with guest reviewers and.
So the question I have is, it would help research ethics harmonization, it seems to me, if the minutes of the Board of Records meeting with respect to a particular study were included on this. Is that a policy or not?
It isn't a policy, but we could put that on there. That's actually a really good idea. And you know what? It is something that the CREB, the Clinical Research Ethics Board, does. It makes it hugely beneficial when you look back at a study 2 or 3 years later to figure out what was discussed, why was this approved, why was this let go, that kind of thing. Some boards will do it, but we let the board of record kind of maintain how they normally do that. But I would be definitely open to
I'm not
that.
suggesting it should be a requirement, it's just that it is awfully helpful sometimes to keep.
Yeah.
And then you can look at the provisos and you can see how well the provisos reflect the minutes.
The minutes, exactly. Yep. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. Just as a little bit further, I'm going to go to committees and I can show you where you would be able to find minutes if you wanted to really dig. These are all the committees that are presently on the RISE system. So I'm going to go to the Behavioral Research Ethics Board here. This is the list of meetings. When your institution joins, you will get your own individual Langara Research Ethics Board. You'll be able to edit the staff and committee information by adding people so that anybody who's registered can be added to your board. And that would give them access to your studies only. To be clear around confidentiality, UBC boards can see all of UBC studies and harmonized boards that they're involved in. Harmonized partners can only see studies that they're involved in. So I won't be able to see Langara's studies unless I'm a partner in it. We might move towards, I found it incredibly useful. UBC has 7 research ethics boards, and we have an agreement amongst all of us that the research ethics administrators can see all the studies from all the boards, which is great because people call me all the time about Providence studies and CREB studies, or people will say, I have a CREB study, it's approved under this number, I'd like to do a behavioral version of this, 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 and this, and I can look it up and immediately, but again, that's when that trust comes, because a lot of people put their thoughts and their feelings, and they may not do that as readily if they think it's a provincial platform that everybody's looking at. But trust me, nobody digs around in this for fun. Maybe I think that's sort of what I wanted to show. Quickly. Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time besides giving you just sort of the essence of the system. I just want to go back again to my home. I want to show you the profile page. This is just, you saw how I kind of clicked my name at the top and then went into my profile. Once you are on the system, it's important to keep your profile up to date because some of this will pull, the algorithm will kick in and it will it'll pull from your profile. This can be updated by you at any point. So it is a really good thing to keep in mind that as soon as you're on the system to get your profile up to date. And I think what's next. There's a lot in this system and I don't want to, I'm just going to show you quickly a kind of a workflow here and what really happens in PrEP. So first it's in pre-submission. As an administrator for an institution, you can access applications in pre-submission. So we often get researchers who are about to submit their application. They have a question, you can look at it and give them advice on it before they've submitted it. It then will go in UBC's case to department review, and it kind of goes through that review loop. In the harmonized case, it skips this stage and it goes right to the LREB for review, and it goes through this sort of changes required. And so the researchers can see at any point where their application is sitting in the system, and then they'll know sort of what to expect. They also get notifications from the system as it goes through the system. So if it's been assigned for review, they get a notification. So they get sort of an update of what's happening with their research ethics application. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
I just want to say we've got an excellent manual. So it wasn't me. It was Jean and Paola. It took months to develop this manual so that it is really thorough and reflective of how to use RISE, and so that it could be used no matter what role you're in. So there is a very thorough manual to go with this, as well as the hands-on training.
Okay, so I'm going to pull away from actually using the live system now. This is the content of the application that I talked about earlier. So the first page is the principal investigator. Second page talks about study and funding. It's all been worked into the system to allow for multi-institutional funding questions. Before it was really UBC-centric. There's new conflict of interest questions, which are a branch off. So if they say yes, it opens up. If they say no, it closes. The type of study, whether it's full board, harmonized, risk level. Then 5 is like the bread of the application where you talk about the proposal and the recruitment. 6 is consent. 7 is external approvals. 8 is all about confidentiality of the data. And then 9 is all of the documentations. Each of the institutions that are health authorities have a page 11. We may move towards in the future to have an institutional specific page, which means that if Langara was involved and a Langara page specific to page 11 would open up. We haven't found that we really needed that, so that would be something that we'd be wanting feedback from you moving forward to whether that's something you would find useful. Health authorities have specific needs, and so they often, usually it's around institutional approval, which is separate from the ethics application, so they would they have a need for this sort of unique page that's only for them. Is there any questions around any of this? I know that was a bit of a no? Okay, go ahead and take it away.
Sorry, when did this system go live?
2007. So that's, I mean, it's another thing to keep in mind. You might hear, like, RISE is going to need to be replaced at some point. It has at least 5 years of life left to it, but, you know, all technology needs to be upgraded. So we've just done a major upgrade to it, so I think it'll be fine. We'll have to continue that conversation sort of moving forward, yeah.
But to be clear, RISE went live in 2007, but our part of the platform for the harmonized ethical review was only in September 2018.
Sorry, yes, that was your question. It's only been 6 months for the harmonized part, yeah.
So what was the earliest application that's in this system?
There's some from 2000 even, but those were converted applications from the old DOS system that was pre-RISE. So 2007 would be the earliest, 2006 would be the earliest created applications that started in RISE, like late 2006, kind of November, December, and early 2007. So they would be H07. The numbers are H, and then it's a year. So right now we're dealing with H19 applications, and then there's a unique 5-digit code.
And would you know how many applications you have?
In RISE, yeah, I do. There's about 7,500 active applications. That was UBC applications. Okay, yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
Is RISE a UBC developed product? And what I can see, so if REBs that currently have a paper process, or maybe form fillable offline documents, once they start using the PrEP platform, I can see, you know, REBs becoming pretty used to an online system. Is there the possibility of, if RISE was developed by a third party and just purchased by UBC, maybe there's an opportunity for other REBs to, you know, to purchase licensing for similar software? If it was developed by UBC, is it going to stay at UBC?
Yeah, so RISE is a click commerce platform. We do have a license to use it, but we also have a full-time IT team that takes, like, the whole harmonized workflow was designed and implemented at UBC with licensing from Click. So it's kind of a joint adventure there. Click was very happy and supportive of us expanding our license to the provincial platform, probably hoping that this might happen. I mean, my recommendation is, if there's interest in that, you should definitely bring it up. You might want to be talking to UBC first, and maybe there's some way that your institution can pay an increased license, like a licensing fee, to incorporate your single jurisdictional research into RISE. But that is not included in this one of the things in order for the license to be okay was that it was for multi-jurisdictional research only, and the fraction of research that sort of didn't include UBC was minimal compared to how much actually still does include UBC.
And so, for example, just to tell you what some of the other institutions are going through. So we have at Island Health, we have our own technology platform called Romeo, or Process Pathways. And so we have process pathways for ours, but that's for a single jurisdiction only now. But what we did do was, in order for it to make it a little easier for our researchers who are putting in applications, we changed our application form so that it matched very closely the one that's in prep. So the question style is the same and in the same order, so that also for our reviewers that there wasn't confusion moving between platforms for them. Sorry, this one's mine. I was told to pick up the microphone as well. Sorry about that. So the Board of Record decision criteria, as Jean mentioned early on, we have an algorithm for this, and these are the decision points that we came across. Now, this was another one where we had to work through this with all of the institutions, the partner institutions, as to how are we going to determine who is going to be the Board of Record. And so it's a combination of things, but mostly it comes down to where's the majority of the research going to be conducted. So where are the majority of the participants going to be from, or the study team? Which institution is best placed to mitigate the risk for those participants? The expertise of the REBs can sometimes come into play. For example, we always use the BC Cancer example. We may have a researcher who is predominantly doing research at BC Cancer, but they've brought a student into their project, or a master's student into their project from an educational institution, and so that would kind of make it harmonized. But obviously, BC Cancer needs to be the Board of Record because this is a cancer study. So we'd have those considerations in place. And then the proportion of the study that is hospital-based or community-based will obviously have an impact upon it. Originally, when we were discussing the Board of Record criteria, we did look at the idea of if a research study impacted a hospital in any way, then the hospital really needed to be the Board of Record because they carried a higher level of risk. And that risk has to do with the protection of the participants being patients, their data, etc. Those things are prescribed by different legislation, and so we considered it to be a higher level of risk. Not to mention that it can be confusing as well, working with a health authority. But over time, we realized that it doesn't necessarily fall into that category quite easily. So it's open for discussion. So this is the way the algorithm works, but we haven't had any problems with it since we put it into place. The Board of Record decision has been determined by the computer system, and it's assigning them correctly. What does happen, though, is if there is ever any conflict, so say a research ethics board administrator takes a look at a study and goes, ooh, I think the algorithm might have got that wrong. It's a simple conversation, and they can change the Board of Record in the application. So it can be changed immediately. It's not an issue. But we haven't had any conflicts come up.
No, it hasn't. I mean, I'll just show you what it looks like. It is, oh no, there you go, this matrix. So it is an algorithm that pulls this information, but the researcher does click on these separate categories, and the algorithm takes the kind of scoring that comes from this along with primary affiliations to really designate which board would get the Board of Record. So if you have just a study team member from the University of Victoria, you're recruiting patients, and a study team member from the University of Northern British Columbia, but you are accessing records, analyzing data, recruiting patients, and study team member, like all four along the top, it's very likely that this one, in this case, would be UBC, and it would go to the behavioral board.
Yeah.
So
UBC. All things created equal, it'll defer to the primary affiliation of the principal investigator.
Yeah, and in this, there's an extra layer around BC Cancer and some secondary affiliations that are actually primary affiliations. But it is true. So if you were to fill out all of this equally, it would go to whoever. What's the primary affiliation of the? And it's true. We haven't had a lot of pushback on this. And so the other thing about this is that researchers used to shop around a little bit which REB they wanted to go to. This system does not allow researchers to choose which board they want their ethics application to go to. Now that was a bit of more of a seller. It does allow a box. It says, you know, based on your application, your ethics application will be reviewed at this research ethics board. If you disagree with this or you have comments, let us know, and that'll be taken into consideration. But we haven't had a lot of pushback on that as well either, because usually we're not trying to cheat people out of their regular REB. If it makes sense for it to go there, it will go there. But there are a few times, specifically between that kind of murky boundary between behavioral and clinical, where they might want to push it to the behavioral because they're perceived to be less picky. That kind of thing from the researchers has not been, it's not allowed in the system. So.
What it has done, though, is having this algorithm in place has allowed for us to have a lot more efficiency for the Research Ethics Board administrators, in the sense that we're not having to have a bunch of phone calls, not being able to get somebody because they're on vacation, then sending an email, then waiting for them to come back in order to just have a conversation about who should be the board of record, or emailing them the primary document and everybody taking 4 days to read it. We don't have that anymore. The algorithm is deciding. It's a much more efficient process for us, and we got the algorithm right. So we're very grateful for that.
We think we've got it right.
Well, 6 months in, it looks right.
It's true. Okay, so please ask questions that you have. We have about 15 minutes left or so. I have a couple more slides that I'll talk through, and then we can just open it up for questions. I did want to chat a little bit about challenges, because this did come up in different scenarios. We've alluded to some of them: academic institutions versus health authority perspectives and expertise. That was a challenge for us, particularly around institutional approvals and actually granting offices. We had to ask people to separate their research ethics process from grants or from the institutional approvals so that we could focus just on the ethics piece.
And that was something that was actually, sorry to interrupt, but that was something that was actually agreed to by the partner institutions as part of the Reciprocity Agreement in 2014, was that each of the institutions agreed that they would be separating their research ethics review process from their institutional approval because of the operational approval that is required. That can be different at each institution. We could not harmonize that across the institutions because I don't know who the directors are in my institution, let alone somebody else's institution.
Yeah, that was an important one. Differing policies and administrative processes across REBs. This is where I think we all had to just be ready to be partners and to collaboratively work, because sometimes people have policies that they really love that aren't really embedded in anything that's substantial, but it used to be a really important policy 10 years ago and it was embedded in something substantial. So we had to work through all of that. And so how do we, without people getting defensive or upset, because, you do work a certain way and you've done this thing for 10 years and now all of a sudden somebody's telling you that that's irrelevant and why are you doing this, and or vice versa, you don't have a policy for whatever that is. Oh, we never thought about it like that. Oh, we let those go. And so we had to work a little bit through that, the sort of the differing precedent maybe from amongst the different REBs. I think the big key was just be okay being wrong, and being a little bit flexible and having a conversation about certain things. We've had to work through some sticky stuff, and it's been fine as long as you're okay and you understand that any good process gets a little sticky here and there, and so that was one of the challenges. I already talked about the separation, or Terry did, of operational approvals and grant approvals. There is a technology learning curve, so certainly I think I would warn people about this. Once you're up the hill, though, it's a much better view. I can guarantee you that. But that is going to be one of the challenges at your institution. And also, if your researchers are used to filling out a PDF or a Word document, it's going to be easier for them to keep doing that. To all of a sudden have to move to the PrEP system is going to mean a little bit of a learning curve for your institutions. We can support you through that. Paola it can be used as a point person for getting people onto the system and to helping people through it. So there's somebody that they can call. But I can't pretend it's not going to be there. This is just, I guess, a call out to everybody to be realistic about where each institution is in the process. Some people may be, ready to take the full dive. Other people may be just testing the waters. So that was that bit of a challenge. I didn't even know this slide was active. It says, not everybody will have the same starting point, and that needs to be okay. That's a bit of an old statement, but that was certainly at the beginning an important place to, again, UBC, I keep using it as an example, but I do think it has some sophisticated processes that have been in place for like 30 years. And so it had websites of guidance notes and tons of precedent. It has thousands of applications, like 8,000 active applications right now. In the system. So obviously it was easy to say that they're involved at this point, but really everybody has something to add to the conversation, and we can't get too frustrated or flustered when somebody isn't quite there. So must-haves, patience, institutional support. I think that one is key. As far as the institutional support, it's important that your institutions know that you want to do this and they support you for doing it. Make sure that your institutions do have time to build those relationships at the beginning when you're getting used to the models. It's probably not going to be perfectly smooth the first time you go through, but it will be the next time, or if not that time, the next time after that. And be open to coming out to the stakeholder events and getting to know each other. Willingness to be flexible. I've talked to this and I just said communication is key. Often if people start to get upset about something, it's a good idea just to pick up the phone at that point. So joining. Terry, are you doing this one or am I doing this?
No, I was doing the last three.
Oh, okay. So this is what Karen wanted to know all along. So this year we are going to do, so if you're interested in joining, basically what we require is having a bit of an information session like this one, so you have a clear idea. The package that John sent around would be kind of our first step. Read through the package, read through the guidance notes and the expectations, and if you're thinking that you're ready to come on, what we would do is we would set up a hands-on training system. I have a requirements document for the actual technological platform that I would need you to fill out. That includes things like your institutional address, your logo, stuff that would be inputs into the system. There is a user agreement or memorandum of understanding or agreement of use, whatever legal wants to call it, in development right now. So this has not been, it's not ready yet. That hasn't stopped others. But it may, and it didn't stop me, but it is basically a user agreement for the use of the PrEP system. So if you get on board, your researcher information will be stored in PrEP. What does that mean for your institution? What does that mean for UBC? And it's just an agreement that outlines that. It basically says that you can't sue UBC and we can't sue you, and we will not delete your information, but you may not be able to get it extracted. That's like, it's an audit system, nothing gets deleted from it, nothing really gets deleted in this age anyways, but it does outline how that all will be handled if you ever decide to leave the institution. And so if you are ready to take that dive, reach out to Paola and we will...
That's great, that's what I need to hear. I'm sorry, I gotta leave early.
Oh, you're very welcome, Karen. It's good to see you. Hopefully we'll see you at REB West.
Yes.
Stakeholder event the day before. So this stakeholder event is going to be an inaugural event that we're going to see how it goes this year. It's going to be before the Research Ethics BC conference in Kelowna. It's a great opportunity to come out and enjoy some wine and sunshine in the Okanagan. It's going to be the day before that conference because we're trying to facilitate.
The REB West
19th and the 20th, right?
Sorry, the conference dates are the 20th and 21st of June.
Oh, yeah, we're the
And
19th.
so our stakeholder event is going to be on the 19th of June. And so that we're going to be sending out more information on this to the institutions that have shown interest. But yes, we're hoping to have a nice interactive session where everybody will get a chance to get to know the other institution players and have a chance to speak to them about their experience, how they're using it, how they're finding it, and have an impact upon what we're going to do in the future as well.
Yeah, so some of what we've talked about here will be repeated there, but it won't go into as much information. It'll be about 2 hours. It'll give you an opportunity to network as well with all the other.
And we'll offer a hands-on training session for prep at the end.
Yeah, so if you've decided you're ready, we can do a hands-on training system, yeah. Okay. Is there any other questions?
Can you just elaborate what the expectations are with respect to institutional support?
Oh.
What does that mean?
Yeah, it was really throughout the process, institutional support and this is a process thing. It means that your institution is aware and is supporting your administrators to spending their time on Research Ethics BC. So this could mean working committees around research ethics. It should be part of the job descriptions of the people. To me, it works so much better when you have an institution that supports their administrators versus we've had a couple of scenarios where there's been some reluctance by senior administration, but really energy by sort of the director and managerial level. That's all resolved over time, but it can cause frictions, certainly if you don't have upper management support to be involved in the process, because it's time consuming. In the end, it will benefit you in the equal, like it will not be more time consuming than your regular job. And it is my hope, especially with the capacity building, that you will have access to resources. So you will spend your time working on one working group and developing a single resource, but there'll be other people working on a whole bunch of other working groups that will develop all these other resources that you can use. So you're going to get, 5 times as much resource and educational events or capacity building type things from membership. But it's important that people understand that there is that sort of external, you'll have to attend meetings off of campus and that kind of thing.
An example of one of the working groups that we had most recently was the one that revamped the clinical informed consent template. And so basically it was a working group that took the old one and they revamped it and they've added some more text to it. They were working, it took them about 6 months to do this because it is off the sides of people's desks. But they were supported by their institutions to have that little extra bit of involvement in that rather than just doing their day-to-day job. They were involved in this mutually beneficial provincial initiative.
So my thought about that is that for many colleges, the administrators are also academics who are also the Research Ethics Board's chairs or co-chairs. And, so I think it's really important for you to insist on institutional support because these people are often, I think we're actually very good at Langara in terms of what the institution is doing, but that push or the need for that to participate in this initiative, I think, is really important to be stated clearly. So funds for travel, to conferences, to workshops, to if you want to have a meeting of stakeholders with the informed consent revision or something like that. I think that's absolutely crucial, and it's not a lot of money, but it's sort of fundamental, and then that builds capacity and for everybody, right?
I do feel like it is a bit of a win-win sort of scenario, but you do need people to be on side and believe in that. So it can't be kind of, what I would say is that Research Ethics BC is also interested in supporting people who would otherwise not be able to attend some of these events to attend. So, but I do feel like the institution has to has to be on side as well. It needs to be a bit of a shared vision. And as colleges and smaller universities do, like you just look at what's going out as far as granting funds and money, research is being divided amongst these institutions more and more. And they're going to have to adapt, I guess.
I want to thank you very much and moving on. And nice to meet everybody. I too have to dash for a ferry. Yes. Yes, so that was great.
All right, thanks for coming.
We have a couple more minutes if there are questions.
Thanks so much.
Any questions? Okay, well, I want to thank our presenters for an extremely thoughtful and illuminating review, and congratulate you and others who've been involved, Paula and others who've been involved in this process. It's wonderful to see something develop as well as this has, and I think it's probably a reflection of the individuals who are involved to a large extent. So congratulations and thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.